Hello, and welcome back to What's Next, Friend, where I talk about how I wound up having a 33-year military career and keep you up to date on what is going on in my life and what I'm doing as I enter and transition into this next phase. Mostly for historical purposes, I'm doing this, and then just to keep myself honest to make sure I'm actually doing all the things that I said that I want to do. So, now we're going to talk about Vandenberg Air Force Base. And this is okay, I'm just going to count with you. I can't remember which assignment this is. So it is, first assignment was Dover, second was Yokota, third was Pope, fourth was Vandenberg, fifth was Beale, back to Vandenberg for assignment number 6. This is where I came back to Vandenberg and I worked as an instructor. I worked in what we call initial qualification training for the weapon system that I worked for. And I don't think I shared a lot of that on the previous talking about Beale. I did talk about my crit and that, but so I was a space warning officer working in a ground-based missile warning. And so when I got to Beale, I was an instructor teaching the folks graduating from prerequisite space training. Did that. And I had my first deployment at Vandenberg. I went to Iraq. I was in Iraq for I think 6 months, almost 6.5. It was an augmentee deployment. I was the only Air Force person assigned to a Army battalion, and yeah, it was some stuff. I had at that point I joined the military in 1992, and I think this deployment was like 2008 or 2009, and I hadn't deployed at all. Even though we had conflict during the whole time I had been in before. So this is my first deployment. Yeah, as an officer. I've been on captain before I left, and yeah, it was eye-opening. The biggest thing, people make jokes about the military and like, oh, the Air Force does this, the Army does this, the blah blah blah. It's all very, very true. The Air Force I did feel like I was in the Air Force amongst the Army battalion. Other than it being literal war, it was also strange because the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel, used to call me Tootie. I don't know why. He said that everybody in the Air Force that he knew had call signs, which meant that every Air Force person he knew was a pilot or a flyer or an aviator of some sort. And that's true. A lot of them have call signs, but I was not that. I was a space officer. Like, we didn't do that. I didn't have a call sign. But he decided to give me a call sign of Tootie, which was strange, but also weirdly comforting because my mom's favorite doll when she was a kid was Tootie, and she gave my daughter a baby doll that was like squishy and plastic that Jasmine loved, and she wouldn't sleep without Tootie. And so it was strange for this man that I never met to call me Tootie. I mean, it was weird because it was like comforting in that the name Tootie had been in the family, but then also weird, like, why is this man not calling me Captain Barr, he's calling me Tootie? Anyway, so that's my first deployment. Also at Vandenberg, we had our first puppy. His name was Roscoe Pico Train, and we only had Roscoe for like 2 months, 3 months. I couldn't take care of him, so I gave him. Did I give him back? Yeah, I gave him back to the person that I bought him from. But what's interesting about Roscoe, he was so sweet. And I had this huge backyard. I lived in base housing, and I had a huge backyard, and so I would leave him out in the backyard. And every time I would come home, we would have so many toys, but I would come home, he would have all of his toys lined up, like just lined up in a line, and he would be like snuggled in the middle of them. And I was like, it's like his litter. He was such a sweet boy. We used to call him Roscoe Pico Train. Um, yeah, that was Roscoe. Another thing I remember about that second assignment at Vandenberg was so I did come to be an instructor, and before you can be an instructor, you have to go through something called basic instructor training, or it's called basic instructor course, BIC. And I remember the first, I think it's a 3-month course. The first few days, or the early on in the course, my grandmother who helped raise me, she passed away, and it really shook me. It like affected me in a way. I was in the middle of this course, um, this thing that I had to do, and I needed to leave to go to her funeral, but I also had like this huge presentation that I needed to do because we had certain blocks of instruction that we had to complete that were like graded blocks of instruction, and I just remember giving this presentation or giving my instruction that I had to give, and doing it knowing that my grandmother, I don't know, it was hard for me to do, but I did it, and I did it in a way and such. Um, Only a few people knew what happened, and so I left for bereavement, and so I was on emergency leave for, I guess, 4 or 5 days. So I missed 4 or 5 days of the course, and then when I came back, there were like half the class didn't know what was going on, and they could not believe that I gave this. I gave this brief or this presentation with my grandmother who had passed away that morning, or I did it and then I left immediately to go to the funeral. They had no idea. And I just remember thinking grandma would be so proud of me. I graduated that course as a distinguished graduate. um, and another thing, I thought she would have been really, really proud of me. Yeah, so my grandmother passed away also there in Vandenberg. So grandmother passed away when I first got there early on, and then my dad passed away um, towards the end, and I didn't really know him. I mean, I knew who he was. I didn't have a relationship with him. Um, didn't really, have that kind of father figure or whatever, but I just remember going back to Georgia. So Vandenberg's in California. I remember going back to Georgia for my grandmother's funeral, and then going back again for back to Alabama for his funeral, and all that happened in Vandenberg. And that was my 5th assignment. Jasmine did great in Vandenberg. She did gymnastics. She did piano in Beale. I just should have talked about more things that she did at Beale, but she hated piano. But so in Vandenberg, she continued with cheer. She cheered for a competitive cheerleading team named Shockwave. She did gymnastics, and she was in the praise dance group, the praise and worship dance team at church. She also, what else did she do there at Vandenberg? Was she on the track team? Oh, that's what she would do. So she had her friends or whatever. And so we lived on base again, like I said, in a big base house. And she would just walk around base, go to like her and her friends. And I just thought that was like I'm like, it's so far away. What are you doing? What are you doing? And so actually I had gotten her a walkie-talkie. Or did I get her a cell phone? No, she had a cell phone at that point because she was flying back and forth to see her dad. And she was flying as unaccompanied minor. So she had a cell phone at that point. But yeah, that was Vandenberg. Yeah, a lot happened there. Oh, that's also, I graduated and I got my master's degree there as well at that assignment. So bachelor's at Pope, master's at Vandenberg for the second time. And that's Vandenberg. All right, guys. Talk to you next time.